Hey, we got a great show for you guys. We are going to talk about everything that's going on with the Saints, the narrow victory over the Atlanta Falcons, why the team is incapable of closing out games, and should Alontae Taylor be the number 2 cornerback once Marshon Lattimore returns. We got all these topics and much, much more in this jam-packed show about the Saints, who are kind of making the weirdest, weakest playoff push in NFL history, at least since the last time the NFC South was down this bad. We're coming to you from the Better Call Bado podcast studio, and we are presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. Hardhide is an 86 proof blend of 3-year-old wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. It is blended in New Orleans, and it is not for the thin skin. Look it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call Bado at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And make sure you check out our friends, Firehouse Subs, Veterans Boulevard location. Great people do great things for the community. So as you're doing your Christmas shopping, make sure you hit them up. They're right up there. Buy them all. All right, let's get into the show.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kevin here. I'm here with Nick and Mike as usual for the NewOrleans.Football podcast. It is the Tuesday before Christmas, and the Saints are winning. Did the Saints give like their fans a little early Christmas present and a win this past week? Not sure, but it's a lot better going into it with a win. So, Nick, Mike, how we doing today, guys?
Doing pretty good. I was like, changing the narrative a little bit, talking after a win. They made it feel like kind of a gross win, but it's better than just same old every week, right?
Yeah, I was certain that we were going to be coming on here talking about a loss, kind of the way that game was going.
Like
Atlanta was kind of just running the ball down their throats. It felt like they were helpless. There was nothing they could do. And then somehow Justin Evans saved the season, maybe saved DA's job, at least saved DA from his seat catching on fire
probably.
this
But the
week.
one thing we were saying in the press box, like when they were trying to protect that lead with about 8-9 minutes to go, I was saying to Nick, I mean, we know they're not going to be able to run out the clock because they haven't been able to do that all season. But maybe if Atlanta takes the lead early enough and the Saints have to go to their 2-minute offense to get down and kick a game-winning field goal, maybe that'll work because their 2-minute offense works. Their 4-minute offense does not work.
I have no faith in Andy Dalton closing out the game right now, though.
Bad thing to hear, man. That is sad. Like, let them score because
if the Saints are forced to go to their 2-minute offense, that's when they actually look good.
Yeah,
it looked like everybody could have used a little Hardhide while things was going a little crazy there. Yeah, man. Again, shout out to our sponsors, Hardhide, Firehouse Subs, and Bado Law. Always want to say what's up to those guys because they help us do what we do. So always love there. Let's get into some topics. First thing I thought about, and so what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to be honest, like, because they won, and I don't want this to be a podcast that felt like a loss, but there's a couple of things I feel like we need to tackle in the spirit of free and fair journalism, and so let's get into it. So did you feel like, and let's start with you this time, Mike. I think I started with Nick last week first. So did this feel like a little bit of a letdown coming off a bye? Did you expect them to show more, or like, hey, this is a division game against a team that knows you, and football games are hard to win, and they have talent too, and you just take the win how you get it. So, like, once this game was over, basically looking at how they started, and it looked like things were going to go well, and they could have been up like 21-0 or 3. I forget what the exact score was, and then they barely won. I think they won by a field goal, so won by 3 points. So, yeah, just what's your perspective on this win, all things considered?
Yeah, I mean, look. A win is a win, and they've proven how hard wins are to come by. And actually, I think everybody would sign a deal that if the Saints could just handle closing out the games where they had big leads, give them the Tampa win from 2 weeks earlier, give them the Cincinnati win from earlier this year, and that would be great if they were a 7-7 team that just held on to their double-digit leads. You don't need to demand more than that. Like, you're getting pretty greedy if all of a sudden the Saints figure out a way to win a game, and then you're like, but you should have won it more impressively. Look, 2 days earlier or the day before, or whatever, we saw team blow a 33-point lead. So, give them the win. That's been their biggest hurdle all year. Now, if they had blown it, then of course we would be torching them right now. And frankly, one of the things, if they had won by a lot, if they had won, 35-3 or something like that, then maybe I'd feel differently. But one thing that I think that game drove the point home was, this just isn't a great football team. Like, we keep talking about what they could be, what they might be. Yeah, I mean, when they're healthy, they might be this, or if they hadn't blown this, they might be this, or if they had done this better early in the season, they might be this. They're just an average football team.
There's 3 weeks, so there ain't no more.
Right? No, but what I'm saying is,
no, I agree with you. Don't
pretend. Yeah, don't pretend like they're not reaching their potential. Like, barely winning against a 5-win team, barely beating another 5-win team. Don't expect more than that.
Yeah, the only might be is the season might be over. Like, that's the only might be right now. Like, we know what they are. I'll take a slightly different approach, but I agree with you. Get the win out you can, because this is who you are. You're digging at the bottom of the barrel here. You're barely, relevant in the NFL landscape this season. And the only reason you are is because everybody in your division stinks. But I'll take slightly different, though, that I felt like the way they started and the way they finished, like the way they started, they should have been able to build on that more. And they blew an opportunity for a feel-good win, an opportunity to maybe change the narrative just a little bit going down the stretch. And then they almost lost this game, how they've almost lost every game. But the important thing here is that they found a way to make a play, and they won the game. But I kind of felt like when the game ended, it kind of felt too similar to every other game that they've played, where it really had an opportunity to maybe be a little bit different. They ran 12 really good offensive plays, and then it was like, once they got to the call sheet, they didn't know how to kind of put it together and run the game the way they needed to run it. But yeah, they got the win. That's what counts. And if they had figured out how to win a couple of these throughout the season, things would be completely different right now. So I agree with you overall 100%. It's just, I would have liked it to feel just a slightly bit different.
I mean, we see this all the time, though. I guess what I'm saying is, this is, Patriots, Raiders. I mean, this is just so many games in the NFL now. And the only thing we're really asking of the Saints is not that they were night and day different team, but if they could have just held on to the games that are almost impossible to lose. So if they would have just held on to Cincinnati and Tampa the way they just held on against Atlanta, they're a 7-7 team right now.
Yeah, no question.
So just do that. We're not asking for the world here. Just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the spirit of the question I was asking, because I'll be honest with you, I kind of felt the same about this game after it was over as I felt about the Bucs game where they lost. It was essentially the same game in a lot of ways, and they just gave it up. And at one point, Drake London did his best Julio Jones fumble at the end of the, at a crucial time impression, but that's basically the difference between the two. So, the reason why I posed the question is because, yes, a win is a win in the NFL. And listen, I've been saying it for years, right? You take them I've never seen an ugly win, right? But
I have. Just did.
This one was an ugly win.
This is pretty close.
Right. Well, Jay-Z says there's no such thing as an ugly billionaire. I'm cute, right? So I kind of see I see wins the same way.
They earned that cushion, though. They earned that cushion. The reason they almost blew a 14-point lead is because they had a 14-point lead. I mean, they played. They did enough good things to earn every last bit of rope that they used at the end of that game.
Yeah, they used every string of that rope. That rope, they would have pulled that rope 1 centimeter of tension, or 1 ounce more of tension, and it would have broke. But
my only beef with it is it felt like they almost let us forget who they were at the beginning of the game, and then they were like, "Oh, this is who we are." By the end of it, So it was like it would have just been nice to go through a whole game, sort of like the Raiders one, where they let you forget kind of their issues and the underbelly and all the struggles and everything, and then this is who we are. So
and then you look at the teams they beat, and you see the Rams are like a dumpster fire. The Atlanta Falcons are not good. The Raiders is a game that we mentioned. So it's just I don't see it's just no quality wins, right?
And I think felt like a quality win for a while, but they might not even make the playoffs.
Yeah, that was Geno Smith was the MVP at one point in the season. I'll say that, jokingly. But it just, I guess the thing that's troubling about it is the issues that have plagued this team game in and game out. Inability to close, stagnant offensively. The defense is being leaky. Situational football. Just all the things that you can't fumbling, right? All the things that have plagued this team all year, is not being fixed. And so, like, how do you place that? Like, what do you like? When you see those problems, I mean, I look at coaching, right? I think it's players too. I don't think anything is all one thing or another, but at some point, the issues that are continuing to show up over and over, they have to be addressed. And if they're not being addressed with the method that you're using to try to fix them, then, you got to try something different or put in different players. I don't know. And so that's kind of where the comment came, like, this was similar to the Bucks game, except, one guy fumbled at the end of the game. And there's more to it than that. But it's just something about it where the same issues continue to plague the team. And I think it's, I just think it's a bad sign for this team. And I think it's something like, even with the remainder of the season going on, it's something that you want to see them clean up, right? Because now you're looking going forward and trying to evaluate pretty much everybody in the organization at this point.
I don't think they are going to clean it up, though. And I think the big issue here is kind of a talent issue. I think their defensive line is not good, and that's a major issue in the run game. I think there's a lot of stuff getting to the linebackers that didn't used to get to the linebackers. And I think that's
what changed there, though, Nick? What changed there? Like, what happened?
This used to be the best run defense in the league.
Yeah, the run defense with the same players, and now they're not the run defense.
Yeah, I think it's and a lot of the guys are still the same too, right? But I think it's deterioration of talent, age, and then there's just a couple little detail things that are going on, like on outside zone runs. The one cardinal sin of those is that you cannot pursue too hot as a linebacker. If you go too hot as a linebacker and you get in there too quick, you're going to create a lane for the running back to cut back into. And in this last game, they got murdered on outside zone runs. And that was really what Atlanta did the whole entire game. I think they had 26 of them in the game, and they were almost all effective. And it was because the linebackers were too far up the field repeatedly. But also, you aren't getting the same kind of push you did from your interior. And these guys aren't getting into the backfield and making plays. And, David Onyemata is taking a step back, and now your ends aren't making plays either. So it's just kind of like an effect across the board, and it all kind of adds up. And then on top of that, Demario Davis is doing a good job of pursuing and getting the plays, but he misses three tackles in this game. One of them was a really long run where he led the running back out to go up the right sideline. So it's just kind of been a building block effect. And I'm just using this one run as an example. 4.8 yards per season this season they're allowing on it, whereas from 2017 to 2021 it was like 3 point something. So it's a whole yard worse, and that's really the difference. You went from being probably the best team in the league at stopping this particular run to being the worst, and it's baffling in some respects. And then I think also not being able to stop the run has also had an adverse effect on the pass rush too. It's significant, and then when teams can run like that, you can't really go after them. And teams are running the win now, and I don't think that we're going to see. I don't think we should
the next two opponents.
Yeah, I don't think we should see a lot of passes next week. I think you should just run the ball until they make you pass. And this isn't a team that's going to make you pass right now if they keep playing like they are. And I don't think there is a cure by the end of the season. I think that out of character linebacker stuff in this game gets fixed up, and that gets a little bit better. But I don't think there's a wholesale like, they're going to turn the corner. As we said before, 3 games left in the season. You are what you are at this point. And what they are is a team that needs more talent to be able to stop the run more effectively.
This is the healthiest they've been all season, and that does help in a few areas where if you do stop the run, your defense is pretty equipped to stop some of these, some of the passing games they should face. It'll be interesting to see if they're going to face Jalen Hurts or Gardner Minshew in a couple weeks. But they're going to face 2 teams that are going to run and run and run again, so they're going to have to.
Yeah, if you want more on what the Saints are not doing well against the run, check us out, NewOrleans.Football/subscribe, sign up for a plan. Whole breakdown season long, and then also within this last game, what went wrong.
Yeah, Nick, you stole my next line, man.
Yeah, support us. Support us. We need your support. We do what we do off your support.
Yeah, I was just about to plug that. Yeah, it was good. It just went up, so yeah.
Nick took it straight to the defensive line, and that's what he was pouring over on the film study. But going back to your question, I think the major changes that are going to happen on this team, even if they keep DA as coach, is a totally revamped offensive approach next year. We've talked a lot about Do you gut this roster? Or do you burn the whole thing down? Do you start over from scratch? They probably won't do anything as drastic as all that, but they're going to have a much different offensive plan next year. And I think that's going to start with both offensive coordinator, probably quarterback, definitely, and just maybe considering radical approaches, because this offense was growing stale in the last couple of years of Sean Payton too. They still had Drew Brees running it for a while, but it hit rock bottom last year after Jameis Winston got hurt, and it's been stale again this year too. I think they're long overdue for taking a different approach on offense.
You said
let's talk about.
You said quarterback definitely. You think definitely not Andy Dalton?
No, Andy Dalton might be part of it.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
But they will be looking to upgrade that position through a draft choice, through a trade, through a free agent signing.
Yeah.
They're not going to just run it back.
No doubt. Unless they get forced to run it back with. Yeah.
Ooh. Got to fill up the stands at some point. So let's get into that. So the offense and the stagnation, of the offense, right? I mean, you go and you essentially score on your first two drives. You look like you're pushing, and then a running back decides to fumble the ball at again at a crucial time. What they, I was just it's almost like you're waiting for it. I'm like, all right, well, and it's sad, right? It's sad to feel that way, but you're essentially just looking at this. I'm like, all right, when is the fumble coming?
Could
right?
you guys believe he was right back out there
on the next series?
Yes, I can believe it. I mean, we had a podcast long debate about should you,
let
these
and he
guys
was the perfect
to
opportunity to make an example of somebody. It was one thing when we were like, can you bench Alvin because he fumbled? He doesn't normally fumble. You can bench David Johnson.
Should have.
Yeah. How is Dwayne Washington not the next guy out there?
It's just. Well, it's just not ideal, right? That's the best word I can find for it. But so to the offensive stagnation. So this is a question, and I'm picking on you, Mike, because I remember you've spoken about this before, so I want you to kind of give your thoughts on it. Statistically, Dalton looks fine, right? I mean, he does. I mean, and even when you watch him play, like when I watch Andy Dalton play, I don't see a bad quarterback. I'm just being honest. I see a limited quarterback, but I see a quarterback who, if he had everything around, like if Andy Dalton had a run game, like every quarterback had a run game and good pass protection. But I mean, essentially,
I agree with everything you're saying, though. Yeah,
right. But it's not playing out that way offensively on the field, right? The first two drives look good. The next one looked good when they pushed down, and then they just, and then I think the first drive in the second half, they responded to a Falcons touchdown because they came out the half with a score. So is this, is it too late to look somewhere else? Is it too late in the season to switch?
In the building,
right. I mean, just start Jameis, all the problems are fixed, right? But I mean, do you do something different? Because regardless of what, if one individual player is doing, the offense as a whole is not performing.
Yeah,
so what do you think that they should do
the blame doesn't fall squarely on Andy Dalton's shoulders, and he has done nothing in the last 4 weeks to quote unquote get benched. Actually his like statistical numbers are great. Like his passer rating keeps being like 120, 130. He makes some pretty good throws, and he's staying out of trouble, and he's got his turnovers down. And I made the point last week that if you had a time machine and you dropped Andy Dalton into and flip-flopped him with 2019 Teddy Bridgewater, maybe Dalton's the one who goes 5-0 while Drew Brees has the thumb injury in 2019, and maybe Bridgewater is the one who can't get anything happening with this team. I think it's similar types of quarterbacks who are not going to be the solution.
I actually think he looks a little bit better than Teddy did, to be honest.
But limited was the right word. They're not going to be the ones providing the offense. They're not going to be the ones rallying you back from deficits, and they're not going to light it up. They are that's the right kind of quarterback if you have the run game and the defense. And that's what the Saints wanted to be this year, was a run game and a defense team. And the run game has let them down. The offensive line has let them down. The defense has let them down. As far as not being elite, the defense has been pretty good lately. It just, second half of last season, they were an elite defense. They haven't been that. So I don't think you're like, this is all happening because of Andy Dalton, and if you bench him, you get out of trouble. But yeah, when you are only scoring, 13, 0, 16,
0.
whatever they've been scoring in recent weeks, and then after those two early bursts, the offense went quiet again in this game. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to be out here like saying you'd be a fool for considering trying something different at quarterback.
Yeah. My big issue with the identity of the team, and that is what they came out and they tried to be, is that they didn't build to be that during the offseason. They put all their resources in becoming a better passing team. They signed Jameis Winston. They trade for Chris Olave. They get Jarvis Landry, and they don't bring in another running back.
And let Teron Armstead go.
Yeah. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, this is your approach. This is what you want to be. And then all your moves said you were going to be an 11 personnel, spread out the defense and throw team, try to go deep and do all this stuff. And it doesn't make sense to me. I guess maybe one element of Jameis through that would be that you're trying to have a play action passer, and that's something that he does well. But still, they didn't make the necessary investment, as you said, with Armstead, and then not bringing in another running back, especially when it was possible that your starting running back was going to get suspended at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know for sure how the court case is going to play out. So that is a major miscue on their part. But to Kevin's question, and I keep saying it, I go to Jameis at this point. He's under contract. Your offense isn't doing that great. It's not even a thing about Andy. I think Andy's fine. You can keep playing him if you want, but you got to find out. And I think he can give you some instant offense, and we aren't going to see it. And it's a little bit frustrating that this whole thing from what is it, 3 years now? The thing's going to end without a satisfying conclusion, and that's a little bit frustrating as somebody who just kind of wants to see it where there's not an excuse.
Right.
And granted, if he comes back, there is still going to be like, oh, well, he's never was quite 100% or whatever, but there's not an excuse about the personnel around him or anything like that. And like, I wanted to know, I wanted to see it. I'm not one of these people that think that there's this like on top, Hall of Fame upside, but I think there is some level of upside here that we just haven't gotten able to see. And, you got the 2-4-3 burners now doing everything at wide receiver. That's built for Jameis. Like, just let him go out there and just go bombs away. Like, you hit 2 of those plays a game, you're getting 14 points. I mean, it seems like an easy way to get a lot of offense, but they are convicted to, go through with what they're doing now. And he won. Let's see what he does down the stretch. But I would go to door number 2 at this point.
Yeah.
Mike, what would you do, Mike? Or would you make the switch, or would you stick with Dalton? Your DA. I'm giving you the keys to the.
Well,
the
if your DA is different than those of us who want to see Jameis, because DA has we've talked about this before. Like, he has one concern: he wants to win every game. He's treating it as though they are still alive for the playoffs. We can talk about those scenarios.
They're not. I'm not buying that one bit. Don't talk about playoffs.
Every win counts for him trying to keep his job too, and he absolutely believes, especially with the plan that he's putting together every week. Unfortunately, they're plans that are like trying to win games 20 to 13. That's that's their end game every week. He believes Andy Dalton gives him the best chance to win. And I don't disagree with that on a short-term basis. Like, if you told me this is the last game of the season and you have to win, I'm not switching quarterbacks right now. I'm switching to Jameis if I, want to see what he looks like. I want to know what's behind door number 2. I want to know if we should consider him for next year. I'm considering all of those factors. DA seems to only be considering, I want to win this week. I want to win this week. He's got a job to save, and he wants wins. So that's different. I want to switch to Jameis, but I'm thinking more globally than he probably is.
I'm not sold that Dalton necessarily always gives you the best chance.
No, not always. Yeah. Not always. But if you're playing it 1 week at a time, which they are, they don't have time for someone to work out the rust and work out the kinks. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
He has to win. Now, if they lose to Cleveland and Tampa wins, and they are officially mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then there's absolutely no excuse for him not to give a 2-week trial period to Jameis. But as we've said time and time again, if we never see Jameis on the field again, that means they've already made their decision and he's never playing for the Saints again.
Yeah.
And that might be where they're at. It might be.
And then again, like, even if he gets those 2 games, it's not like a fair shot. No, it's not a fair shot. Not everybody's, I think naturally people would take their foot off the gas a little bit because you're out of it and nobody's fighting as hard as they are. And now he's in there and he doesn't have, like you said, the rust and all that stuff. You've been out, you've been injured, the timing's off. But I mean, that's probably going to be the best case of the evaluation. So, I mean, it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, though. If I was the Falcons coach, I'd want to have switched from Mariota to Ritter. If I was the Titans coach, I'd want to switch from Tannehill to Malik Willis. I do want to see what the other guy brings. And here's the difference. Atlanta was out of it, so they made the switch. The Titans are still leading their division, so they didn't make the switch. And DA's behaving as the guy who's still in must-win mode.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I get the feeling that they know what they're going to get if they put in Jameis Winston as quarterback, and they've decided that that's not what's best for the team, right? And whatever the short term goals are for the team, because I mean, at the end of the day, he's been in the building for 3 years. I
Yep.
think that they probably feel like they know exactly. I mean, if you've coached a player for 3 years, I think you have a pretty good idea about that player. And I think the Saints have said, we know what this guy does. We know his strengths. We know his weaknesses. And given all of those, I think that, he's not the best. I mean, basically, I think they've essentially washed his hands of him, right? I don't think that, I think they said, after this, you go your own separate ways and, good luck going forward, because there's no reason, because, there's a chance, hypothetically, right? I mean, maybe not, but like when you look at James, you say, okay, well, he's a younger player with a skill set who could develop into something, right? And this is just kind of abstract. But with Dalton, exactly. I mean, no one's starting their franchise with Andy Dalton, right, as quarterback. He's the guy who's going to be, if the Saints don't sign him, he'll be a backup somewhere next year. And boy, he looks like a really good backup. He's a really good backup quarterback. As Andy Dalton's your backup quarterback, you're set at that position, right? So you know when you get there. So I just get the feeling that they've moved on from Jameis Winston as a
No, they
quarterback.
definitely have. I mean, they definitely, absolutely have. I just don't have the same blind faith in some of the decisions that they make that I used to. I want to see it for myself. That's it. I want to see it for myself.
Yeah.
Just because they're saying
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I buy it necessarily. I want to see it.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, if we get a vote, we all want to. And I like Andy Dalton a lot, and I actually think he's getting too much of the blame.
Yeah, I agree.
Like that's why I keep bringing up Teddy
fair.
Bridgewater. I feel like Teddy Bridgewater's Q rating is like 9.9 and Andy Dalton's is 3.3, and I think that's just directly tied to wins and losses. Andy Dalton came in. He is performing exactly as expected, as advertised. He's not overachieving. He's not underachieving. He is doing exactly what he was supposed to. But he's the face of the offensive failure. So I don't have any problem with him. But I want to see Jameis Winston because it's the better movie to pick out of the two.
Teddy's Q rating is what it is too, because he's just Teddy. Like Taysom has the same success. He doesn't have that Q rating.
Yeah.
Jameis has the same level, similar success too, and his Teddy was Teddy. Like people just like Teddy. So I mean that was part of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like he's got like that demeanor.
He's just a real likable. He's just a real likable dude.
Towards too. Yeah, it's hard to dislike Teddy. Like I don't know.
Jameis
I've never seen
show up
anyone
wearing two
dislike.
gloves. Like, hey, can I get in? Can I get in the game?
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. So, okay. So a little bit more on the offense. Why can't they run the ball? Just why? Like, and it's two things for me. Like, and I these questions, they may be really different, but I'm putting them together because I just feel like it's the Saints that's put them together. Like, why can't they get AK the ball? Why can't they get this guy the ball? I don't understand it. I don't understand what's so hard about passing the ball to Alvin Kamara. I don't want to hear anything about teams that are scheming it, right? Because I saw Christian McCaffrey, the McCaffrey kid from the Panthers, everyone schemed him 100%. Like that was the only thing about the Panthers offense, and he was dominant, right? Like good players in the NFL teams try to take them out the game, but they stay good. And like when Mike Thomas was good, people knew Mike Thomas was good, but he was still catching passes. So why can't they? Why can't they get this guy the ball? And the second part of the question is why can't the offensive line run block? Like what is
I thought they
missing
did okay
there?
this week.
They can't run block on 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, or 4th and 1. That's when they can't run block. I haven't looked it up. I should look it up while we're talking. But like 4 weeks ago when I wrote this story, their yards per rush this season was like the 3rd highest of the entire like Peyton Breeze Allen era. They just were running the ball a lot less because they were behind in every game. But when it all of a sudden is you got to get 1 yard, that's what they absolutely can't do. They can't gain a yard. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
They average like 4 yards of carries.
Yeah,
or something.
overall.
And they actually stuck with it this week, which I thought was important for just overall. That was something they need to do a little bit more. As far as passing the ball to Alvin, it's the most mystifying thing of all time to me. I still don't get it. Just get him the ball. Get him the ball. It's really not that complicated. Get Taysom Hill the ball. Get Alvin the ball. Make a commitment to getting these gentlemen the ball, and then they will have the ball. Like, it's not that hard. They're making it way harder than it needs to be. Part of Alvin's problem right now, though, is his pass blocking has been bad, so they've taken him off the field in third downs, and those should be Alvin Kamara
like third
snaps.
and 3, third and 4.
But if you're
giving
up the free blitzer and the quarterback's getting hit, at some point they're saying, hey, like, we can't have you on the field in these situations, and that's detrimental to him. So that's got to get cleaned up a little bit. So it's not all just the team, but the team itself needs to do a better job at getting him the football. It's just mind-boggling to me. And I've asked other coaches, hey, is this as hard as it looks? Does it need to look like this? Is it that hard to get Taysom Hill the ball when you say, I want to get Taysom Hill the ball, or to get Alvin the ball? They said, no, you just get the ball to your best players. Yeah. It's not a hard equation. Just when you come out, say, we are running this play to Alvin, and Alvin has the football. Well, like, I don't get it. It's so frustrating.
And they did it for 4 straight weeks in the middle of the season.
They did it for 4 straight years.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, like, they and we were talking here about that was the main reason Andy Dalton was in the game, was because he was getting the ball to Alvin Kamara. He had 6 catches, 7 catches, 9 catches. It was like, this is what the offense is supposed to look like. I mean, I understand why it disappeared a little against, like, the Rams when they had Aaron Donald, the Ravens, the 49ers. There was a glut there, and even the Steelers with TJ Watt. There was a glut there where it was harder to run the game against the defensive matchups. But then, you do it in different ways. Now, in this game,
you know what makes it easy to beat the pass rush with, though, is a screen.
Yeah, and they don't ever run the screen. So they made it look impossible in this game. I mean, obviously you can tell that they're in their offices saying, how do we get Alvin the ball? Because they do the jet sweep to Alvin, which I don't remember how many times we've seen that over the years, a jet sweep to Alvin.
I was so happy when I saw that play.
I
was like, wow,
Wildcat snap to Alvin. And then they had one more edge play to Alvin that was something a little different. And look, on that final drive, he had the 11-yard gain to move the chains. So they're well aware of it too. I mean, he had like 20 of their 60 touches in this game, and they're well aware of it too. But I don't know why they've made it look as difficult as it. Yeah. You're right. The screen pass. Yeah. Like, we've seen screen passes fail. Like, there's a lot of times where you're like, all right, they've had 5 bad screen passes in a row. They need to go away from this. But show me the 5 bad ones before you go away from it. Because they just went away from it.
Well, like I've said this stat before. Coming out of the backfield to a running back, they've thrown 5, and one of those gained like 40 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys.
It's like, a high percentage, 20%.
I'm cool with 4 failures for the 1 success. I mean, just you gotta run them. You gotta do it. You gotta.
I'll tell you what doesn't work great is just running Alvin between the tackles. That's not his specialty. And this goes back actually to the end of the Peyton era too. But Pete Carmichael's a common thread. This is 2 or 3 years in a row now where it's been a little bit too much running Alvin Kamara through the tackles. Except for the Christmas Day game against Minnesota, that's not his specialty.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't see 21 rushes for 91 yards for 4.3 yards per carry. I get statistically the run game was not bad, right? And I concede that. But as it pertains to how it fit into the game plan and when they could do it if they need to do it, and so they ran the ball better this game statistically, but I don't think they ran the ball well within the confines of winning a football game, and I think that's the problem there. And
they fumbled on the gotta have it play at the end. So I mean,
twice.
The
3rd and 1 in the red zone they fumbled, and 3rd and 1. They gave Alvin the ball on a 3rd and 1 early in the game, and he lost 3 yards, or it was 2nd and 1, I think.
Yeah, that was a
second down run. Unbelievable how if they have 1 yard to gain.
The group text, I was like, oh, these second down runs, right? And also, I mean, Alvin is struggling to block. I don't care. I don't want him as a blocker. I would put him as a slot receiver.
Sure.
More than I would put Jarvis Landry as a slot receiver.
Yeah, fair.
It's just like some of these the decisions. I just, and I'm not saying I know better than
Does he even move around anymore?
I think Alvin is a statue, right? When he's in a game, like I wouldn't fear him as a passer catcher if I was playing the Saints, because he's not catching passes. I think the thing that he's best at, and Alvin Kamara is an absolute elite runner of the football. Skill set wise, he is cat-like quick through the hole. He's patient. He has burst. He has everything you need as a running back. He's breakout speed. He doesn't lack anything, but that's not what he's best at, right? And so I would put him as a slot receiver for a whole game and just watch magic happens, right? Just make them run choice routes all game, right? And at least the middle of the field is open for someone crossing on the backside of the play. So it's just like even if he's not the primary, at least use him to set things up for the players, right? Because when you see Alvin Kamara run a pass route in the middle of the field, two defenders always react. Like it's just it's something that you're going to get, and I just don't feel like
the Rashid Shaheed touchdown. The linebackers were swarming Alvin on that one. That's part of the reason he had single coverage against the safety.
Yeah, and I know a coach will come in here and tell me something real smart, schematic about, well, if we line up this way, all right, I get it, fine, but I don't care. I don't care. Just get the guy the ball in the pass game. If he's not pass block, let Adam Prentice pass block. I'm pretty sure he's, so I just think some of these things that you see with guys with their best players, it's just not happening with this team, and I just think it's kind of led to a lot of the offensive stagnation. So, but okay, the Saints did win this game, so I do want to move to some non-pessimistic type topics, and I'll say this about DA, and I have, and we've spoken about DA, and I think all of our thoughts are pretty clear. If they're not, there's a lot of podcast content to go back and listen to from previous weeks. Don't want to rehash that, but I will say that I do think it is a credit to him that the team, they look like they playing hard. Like I didn't get the feeling that this is a team that's checked out, that this is a team that's kind of mailed it in for the season. Maybe one situation, but we'll maybe get into that later. But I see guys out there playing hard, and this is just keep this short, right? Because there's some other interesting stuff I want to talk about. But just to DA, I do think that he's doing a good job of at least getting the guys motivated and putting a product on the field where they look like they're not checked out.
Yeah, look, DA is a hard guy to defend this year because they've underachieved in so many areas, and there's a lot of things you can point to coaching. That's the problem. The missed tackling, the fundamental things, the penalties, the 12 men on the field penalties, like so many things you can point to coaching. But yeah, that would be first on my list is, has the locker room turned on him? Has the team checked out? And that has not been on anyone's list of main reasons to want to fire DA.
Yeah, they could have quit at the end of this one. I mean, there was every reason to quit. It was slipping away. Atlanta was taking their soul just kind of by the way they were running on them, and they could have very easily just not tried to swarm the ball there and get that turnover, and they got it. So credit to him, they're still playing for him. So
they're the best first. If games were based on first quarters, they'd be leading the division by 4 games right now.
And I know like everyone's like posting pictures of like the locker room scene post game and saying like, oh, they don't look inspired or anything like that, but they looked inspired on the field. So I mean, that's really what matters right now, and he's getting it out of them.
They're being professionals. They're being professionals.
And we've been extremely critical of DA. This is the one thing he's doing well is that the team is they're still playing for him. So I mean that's something he has in his pocket for now. Does it save him?
Yeah.
I don't think singularly, but it could be the thing that would hang him.
Yeah, I mean, and these guys are professionals too, right? At the end of the day, like you have pride on what you put what you put out there on the field. So but just to that point, what's going on with Marshon Lattimore? I just is that an injury situation? Is it I heard the secondary coach, I'm running a blank right now. Coach Chris Richard. Yeah, he basically said it's a Marshon thing, right? And so, I read that. There's a couple of ways you can read that. You can read that as Marshon is hurt, and they are depending on him to let them know when he feel like his body is ready. Or are they trying to say, hey, listen, ask him, we think he's fine. And we just got to trust his word on that. Like, just what's going on with that? Because they didn't IR him. He's been he's been practicing, but he's not playing. It's just a situation where there's just a lot of questions there. So,
in all fairness to Marshon, I don't want to speak on his injury. I don't know, specifically what's going on with it. And he's, politely been asked to speak to the media all season, and he's politely declined. And, that's his prerogative. That's fine. But without talking to him or really knowing anything about the situation, I think it's a little bit unfair for me to kind of try to say what's going on
Speculate
there. Yeah, without being able to ask him the questions, I don't feel comfortable trying to speak on, kind of what his process is or what he's feeling.
And not IRing him. Look, we can poke and prod at a lot of their decisions when it comes to IR this season, and that would have been an obvious decision. But I mean, the initial feedback we heard on that was never a definitive, he'll be back in 3 weeks. But it was with these types of injuries, there's a range that includes possibly back in 3 weeks if all goes well, and possibly longer if all, there's a grade 1, there's a grade 2, there's a grade 3. So as I think Dennis Allen said on a couple of guys, if a player of that caliber could potentially be back in 3 weeks, then we want to hold out that hope. But it doesn't mean that they all said, "Oh, this is a 3-week injury. He'll be back in 3 weeks." From the very beginning, a lacerated kidney or something of that nature, you're going to treat that with kid gloves, and there's not a definitive timeline on it, and that's why they're also deferring to Marshon. And when he said that, he said the step that they're waiting to take is, when is he ready for full contact? Because they don't want his first full contact to be in a game. And that's one that they can't just be like, yeah, look, here's the X-ray. The bone is completely healed. Have at him. So I understand why, if this was in a vacuum, I think everyone would understand it. Unfortunately, it comes in a wave of similar injury head scratchers that have taken longer than people want.
Mike Thomas. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, well said, Nick. And I'm with you, Nick. I don't think it makes sense for us to speculate on Marshon, particularly about him having his say in it, right? And just to close this off, just if the guy got a lacerated kidney, well, he does, right? And I would not be in a rush to get on the field for a team that's not going anywhere. I'm just going to be honest with you, right?
I do wonder if they're mathematically eliminated, if that means he's not coming back at all this season. They haven't said that, and he's been practicing, but I think that's a realistic possibility to prepare for, too.
Yeah, you don't have any questions about what type of player he is on the field. You can let Alontae Taylor get some snaps. I mean, and I'm not saying that Marshon is doing this. I'm being very clear about this. I don't know what his injury status is, and I'm not going to speculate.
Well, yeah, the side B to it is that I do think it is a little bit better for the long-term health of the team. The same stuff we're talking about evaluating Jameis and trying to figure out what he can do. I think the Saints need to evaluate Alontae Taylor and figure out what he's going to be. And then, okay, what's your plan at cornerback? Is it a Alontae Taylor on the outside? Do you need to find somebody else that can play the slot? Is Paulson Adebo the odd man out when Marshon plays? Are you good with maybe the top? I don't know. Like a lot of things get put on the table. Now, I was asked a question the other day, like if these two guys play well, does all of a sudden Marshon become expendable? I think it would be very hard to trade him because it'd be a $20 million cap hit if you do trade him. And if you were trading him, you'd be trying to trade him for draft capital of this year's draft. So a June 1st trade, you'd have to wait till then, and that wouldn't be this year's draft. So I don't think you would make that move. I don't think he's movable right now, given the contract. I think he's a building block of the team, but that is just everything is kind of on the table right now, gathering all your information and just kind of seeing where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you said it best. I mean, you're getting a chance to evaluate the rookie, and and get to see what he do, and then you kind of know a little bit of what you can expect from that position.
I think Marshon is probably the only guy on the team that you could trade for a first round pick, though. He probably is the only guy. I don't think it's affordable.
You trade Chris Olave for a first round pick.
I trade Olave for a first round pick.
Yeah. But sure. Outside of him, I think he's really the only guy on the team that you would get a first round pick for.
That's a wild statement because like a few months ago it was like this is a top 5 NFL roster.
How about when these Pro Bowl announcements get made on Wednesday night? In the cricket.
Oh, it's a big cricket. Big zero. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Shout out to Justin Hardy. It looks like he's going to make it. He's deserved it for a while.
Can you imagine a
hardest working dude I've ever been around in?
Can you imagine a Saint?
No.
Yeah, exactly on Hardy. But can you imagine a Saint who would even be a top 5 candidate?
I was shocked that Alvin didn't make the top 10 just off of being Alvin.
Right.
Normally,
there's a few people based on their name, and Tyrann Mathieu, I think, was number 1 in the fan vote at safety or something. But if you're just looking at body,
he wasn't
of work,
on the update. He was like 7th.
If you're just looking at body of work this season, I mean, some of the guys who've been the best players, Pete Werner for a little while, but then he was hurt, and it's going to be.
I would need to look at
punch in this season.
Olave maybe. On a distant wide receiver, maybe top 10 in the NFC.
If they were a winning team, Olave would make it because he'd have hype behind him as a rookie and everything. He would make it.
Yeah, good point. So let's get in. We just got off Marshon, so let's talk about Alontae Taylor, and got a few topics I want to kind of sprint through here a little bit. So if I turn off y'all mics, then don't be offended. Alontae Taylor he's playing well. That's a hard position to come into the NFL and have success at. And, he's someone who you can kind of see him getting better. I know, Nick, you spoke about some of the things that he does well, some of the things he does not do well. But after that, you was like, but there's not a skill set issue. It's just a rep thing. It's something that he needs to learn to, read and key on guys. And he doesn't like the skills, the physical skill set to do any of this. So,
Yeah, he's cleaning
so
up. He's cleaning that stuff up. So like the
so
bad
before you go,
tackling. Yeah, go ahead.
but just 1 second, I just want to ask this question with the caveat. Then I'm gonna pass it back to you. The Saints cornerbacks have a history of starting hot, and then it's not so well. Ken Crawley,
The Crawley corollary.
Good. Next year, no. Janaris Jenkins, first one. Next year, gone. Adebo, first year was good. Eli Apple, like is Alontae Taylor the next guy in this line, or is he like more of the Marshon? Not saying he's at that level, but someone you can consider consistent. Balls in your court.
Couple things here. Yeah, I mean, we won't know until we see him. Till going down the road. I think that there's a lot of reasons to believe in him. I think he's an absolutely elite athlete, and I think his athletic traits, and some of those guys that you mentioned have really good athletic traits, but I think he's really at the top tier of that athleticism. And then, there's a few of those guys on that list that I think that certainly did not have his confidence, and his confidence and his arrogance, I think, is kind of part of the secret sauce of playing that position, and he has that. I think his work ethic is insane. Some of the stuff we talked about, just the curls being something that he was giving up a lot of, the tackles kind of being out of control, him maybe moving too much and being ahead of his hips a little bit. He's fixed all that stuff and gotten better at it over time. So I think that he looks like someone that's probably the real deal. Like, I'm not comparing him to Marshon. I think he's just someone that's probably you're going to see. And look, that's a position where you ride waves and the samples are so small, and then a couple of plays go against you, and that changes your whole quarterback rating against and all that stuff. But
he gets those 2 interceptions, and he's in the defensive rookie of the year conversation or something.
So I think he's someone though that's probably going to have some consistency and some more staying power. I feel better about him than I felt about Adebo last year, just because there is that kind of like elite athletic ability, and I think that's something that is just always going to be there and can help him succeed.
The funny thing about him is, with his aggressive style, his aggression he plays with, I would think his hiccups would be giving up the occasional deep ball because he gambled a little too much, or and they test him twice every game, and he keeps holding up on those deep balls. Every time I'm like, oh no, is this the one that they're finally going to get him? And they haven't gotten him yet. So that's really impressive. The other thing, if you're trying to figure out what his role is going to be on this team, DA keeps coaching through Alontae Taylor. Every time he talks about Alontae Taylor, he's like, and that's what I want to see. This is how I want us all to play. This is what I want to see from everyone. Work ethic, attitude, approach, how hard he's working, how he's taking coaching. Like, DA is glowing about the things he's doing.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, you'll be watching the DA press conference and he's leaning back. Yeah, we want to be a smart, tough football team. Alontae Taylor, yeah, that's just how we want to do. You start leaning forward, getting a little aggressive, voice gets a little loud. I'm like, all right, man. Like, Alontae Taylor gonna be having Christmas dinner at DA's place. He loves that dude from day one. Which he's a secondary coach, right? So I'm pretty sure there's a little bit there. But yeah, it's good to see him play. He's fun to watch at the end of the day, right? And that's kind of part of what you want in football, the entertaining aspect. So it's good to see. It's fun to watch him on the field. A couple other guys. Juwan Johnson is turning into he's ascending, right, as a tight end. Even like not just catching the ball, just some of the things that you don't really get highlights about him blocking, and I'm not saying he's great at that, but I'm just from a guy that used to be a wide receiver. There's a play here or there that you see. He was like, okay, well, he looked a little bit physical at the point of attack. I think he knocked. They showed a replay during the game. He knocked one of the guys on his backside during one of the blocks. I think it may have been number 47 or something. But Mike, I'll start with you. Just what are you seeing from him, and do you think that he is someone that could potentially serve as their number one tight end? Not saying not saying Pro Bowl level,
pass catching tight end. Yeah, I mean, number one tight end doesn't mean he has to do it all. We've seen a lot of guys who are primary pass catchers. And it's impossible not to envision him in that role now. For a little while, he was getting touchdowns, and they were all coming in the 2-minute hurry-up drill, which was just his package. But that hasn't been the case for like his last 4 touchdowns. He mentioned when he caught that one in the red zone a few weeks ago that he was running an old Mike Thomas play because they were using his big body. And they were like,
right,
he fits in that role. These last 2 were both yards after the catch, which are, another element to his game that we hadn't seen yet. It's very clear.
He's good at it.
It's very clear that he's their like go-to guy in the red zone. I mean, maybe Chris Olave is getting so much attention that it's, he becomes the best single coverage matchup. I don't know what that is, but he's been their go-to guy in the red zone. I don't know how you can't keep adding more to his plate.
Yeah, he adds a little bit of blocking to that mix, and he's a
Yeah.
top tier. He's a top tier player.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the secret to just being a good tight end, as Juwan Johnson said, when you get the ball, you got to get a little freaky with it, right? That was the missing ingredient all season. Who would have thought, right? And last one for me, Rashid Shaheed, right? So when you look at him on Olave, do you look at a potential future number 1 and number 2 wide receiver, or how do you perceive, him at both of these guys, like just as a group going forward? Because we spoke about this, I think a lot during before the season when the wide receivers were getting $30 million contracts, right? And so that's a position where you look at, if you don't draft it, then it becomes really expensive to retain those guys. And so, they got 2 very young guys in one draft who seem to be ascending players in one of the more expensive positions in the league. Well, I do think that bodes well. But, do you see these guys as, potential number 1 and number 2 wide receivers for this team? Or do you think that, do you think Shaheed is still kind of on the edge of a number 2 or number 3? Like how just what's the perception of Rashid of Shaheed at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got to add some
size?
some different types of receivers. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to look at it as like number 1, number 2, number 3 type deal.
Yeah.
I think they need somebody that can work that lower area of the field a little bit. I think out of Shaheed, we need to see him. He kind of jumped to the top of the tree. We need to see him work some of the lower rungs of the route tree a little bit more, just a little more consistency there to kind of project all that. But I mean, if we're simplifying the question, like, do I think he's a legitimate NFL wide receiver? Yeah, I do. And I think he's a good player. I think he's someone that should be a weapon on this team. I think he's going to develop more. I think he has a lot to offer. I'd be trying to get him the ball on some like underneath crossing routes and letting him turn and get up the field and do stuff like that. I don't think everything needs to be straight down the field. And, once they figure out how to add a little bit more of that, I think we're going to see him really kind of take off and do a whole lot more.
There's no way they can go the rest of the season without doing that jet sweep again, right? At the very least, one jet sweep that goes to him, one jet sweep that throws the defense off. I mean, anyone who's watched a tape of that has to be terrified of Rashid Shaheed. But I
would run 2 or 3 of those a game. I don't understand what the problem is. Like, this guy is the fastest player on your team. Gosh. I don't care what the 40 says. Like,
he doesn't have
put
a 40.
Him and Alvin back
he doesn't
there.
Have a 40. He's never
run one.
I don't know
what it is, but I don't know what it is, but I know it's fast.
Look, my brain has trouble processing a guy like him because you don't see it that often. Your expectations were so low that you just have to assume, all right, there's probably hurdles he's going to have to overcome, but he's done all the things that check the boxes. I mean, the way he was adjusting his routes and showing some savvy a couple of weeks ago. Did he lead the team in routes run in this last game? I think his offensive snaps and routes run were more than Olave in this last game. He's playing multiple receiver positions now. He's operating, out of the slot. He's operating out wide. He's doing everything that you could ask of him, and he never worked on any of this in the offseason or training camp. Yeah. So imagine what it's going to be like that. But I agree with Nick. I mean, a Michael Thomas type would be a perfect trio with a Rashid Shaheed type and a Chris Olave type.
Who would be a good help for those 2 guys? It's
so
Michael Thomas.
You don't have to be like, yes, he they have to have a Justin Jefferson and an Adam Thielen, and Rashid Shaheed has to be one of those too. But he should be playing close to 40 snaps a game, bringing this element that he brings to the offense, and Olave should be one of the other 3, and a big physical presence inside should be one of the other 3.
Yeah. I like him, man. He's fun to watch. I would like to see them get the ball in his hands early in the down more, because he's absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. He's a punt returner. So, typically those guys, typically good run when they get the ball in their hands, they make plays and things along those lines. So yeah, he's someone I would like to see, like, more screens to him, more jet sweeps. I mean, that jet sweep where he, his first touchdown in his career, I don't think I've ever seen a Saints player move like that or not ever, but I ain't seen a guy move that ball with a black and gold jersey on in years. Right. And so it'd be nice to see them kind of take advantage of
that. Was
just those jet
one of Andy Dalton's best plays of the entire season too, because Andy Dalton almost lost he almost broke his wrist handing it to Rashid Shaheed. He was coming in so hot. Like I was like, oh my gosh, did he actually take the ball right there?
Yeah. I think they need to find a way to put the ball in his hands a little bit more. And like I said earlier in the down, because he's an electric player. So that's all we got, man. Guys, NewOrleans.Football /subscribe. As Nick said earlier, we need you guys. We need your support. You guys are basically the reason why we get to do this. So for the ones that are supporting us, thank you. Happy holidays, everybody, by the way. That's coming up. And so, support NewOrleans.Football. We need it. Shout out to our sponsors, Hardhide, not for the thin skin, excuse me. I know, right? Firehouse on Veterans, serving the community, and also BETTER Law. Check them out.
This weather's not for the thin skin right now. And we have to special love to our friends at the Dome Patrol podcast. I owe them like personal Christmas cards and everything after I slighted them last week. But they're friends of the show. I hope you're checking them out too. They're surviving through this season and trying to put it in the right perspective, just like we are. It's a tough one.
Well, Mike, since you slighted them, send them some Hardhide. Send them some Hardhide and help them out a little bit. So that's it for us, guys. Again, happy holidays. You guys be safe. We'll see you next time we potting. We out.